Hello and welcome to Reflex Point, your weekly podcast where we review and discuss the series Robotech one episode at a time. We're your hosts, Major Medina.
I am Paul Marquez.
And here we are doing our first podcast. So, episode 1 is titled Booby Trap. It first premiered on March 4th, 1985, and it has Robert Barron credited as the supervising director and Steve Kramer as the supervising writer. One thing I want to mention just in my research, Robert Barron played Abraham Lincoln in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Wow, I never in a trillion years would have guessed that.
How amazing is that?
I feel like I've learned some. I am a little closer to my Robotech mastery than I was a few seconds ago.
That's the point of this podcast. So a summary of the episode reads, an alien battleship has been rebuilt, but the launch ceremony is interrupted by an alien rival. So I'd like to start with the introduction, or rather the opening credits. The opening trill of the music always gets my blood pumping. It's called the Robotech theme, and it's original music made for the show by Italian-born American composer Ulpio Minucci.
Is he still alive?
No, he is not. He passed away. I don't have the exact time. Nominated for a couple of Emmys for his music, but every piece of music, I feel like it's been with me my entire life, especially that opening theme. Now, going back to when we were talking about, I'd go and binge watch with you for a summer and then I'd go away, that's many, many months. And I remember one time I was humming this song over and over again and just had that I don't know what this is. And it's not like we had Google or the internet to search or anything like that until I went back to California the following summer. And the minute you popped in a tape and I heard it, I went, that's what I've been humming. And it was the Robotech theme.
Wasn't that such a sense of relief? You're like, I know what I'm singing now.
I honestly felt emotional because this big hanging thing has been resolved. So one thing I thought about in this viewing, the very first thing you see is this film strip coming up from the bottom of the screen. And interestingly, because I watched the original opening as well, the film strip doesn't appear in that. And in my head, I kind of thought that seems like a nod from the director or the writer to include this broken film strip, since they recut and mashed together 3 shows. I may be assigning more value to that, but it doesn't really, in my head, make sense to include that otherwise.
I'm going to have to look at it again. I have the DVDs of the older ones, so I always remember the film strip.
Yeah.
But it may just be that's what I saw,
Well, here's the thing. It's no more than 3 seconds worth, because then it goes into, Rick Hunter coming up from the bottom of a ship, right? In his Veritech.
And you know what? That was my most unfavorite part of the credits or the opening credits, because to me, he's supposed to be looking hardcore, looking up because he's about to take off on his Veritech, right?
Yeah.
But his face looks deformed, man. Like they could have done a little bit for all the drawings they did, and they did a great job. That one part just seems so uneven. Like his eyes, he looks like a Picasso, man. Look at it, study it, and to his face looks like a Picasso.
I'm gonna have to look at it again. You look at it for the film strip, I'll look at it for his face.
Okay.
But I will say this: a lot of this goes back to Ulpio Minucci. Obviously when you're watching it on VHS, it's not worth fast forwarding through the opening credits. And when you're watching a 22-minute show and you're watching back to back to back to back, you know the opening. I don't need to read who the supervising director is every single time.
Right.
But now that I'm watching it on Prime, by the way, I do want to mention we are watching the digitally remastered. It looks amazing.
It's sharp. It is sharp for sure.
Yeah, much sharper than your VHS, but also much sharper than the original broadcast. The thing I want to bring up is now I have the option with a click of a button to skip the intro.
Oh, how amazing is that?
I will not skip it.
You won't?
Oh, I love that opening so much.
I couldn't wait to skip it, man. I was so glad for that feature. Just because I've seen it so many times,
Yeah, absolutely.
And Ulpio, he and I were close personal friends. I used to call him Oopie.
You and Oopie used to go down in the 7-Eleven, right?
Yeah, he loved Slurpees, man. No, but in all seriousness, I've seen it so many times. I just get me to the show. Get me to the show. And I saw that little button and I was like, oh, hell yeah. Click and boom, there I was.
The thing I do skip is the narration at the end explaining what the next episode is about. And I understand when it's broadcast on television, you may need that. Like, hey, tune in next week, same bat channel, same bat time. But I certainly don't need it when I'm sitting there eating my pork rinds and drinking a Bud Light. You know, I've only gone through the series about 4 times. And I did think those were entirely different seasons onto themselves. I didn't realize it was one full season that they'd thrown together.
Yeah, they sure made it feel like different seasons. If you'd have asked me back then, I'd have said 3 seasons.
But now I guess we have to say, 3 wars?
That's how I say it. The 3 Robotech wars.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and ask at the beginning on this first episode. So what's your favorite?
Of the wars?
Yes.
Overall?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times when people get asked what's your favorite, it makes them think that it lessens the value of the other ones, and it by no means does. But my favorite was the 3rd Robotech war.
Okay. I have to tell you, and it may have been your influence, but that was by far my favorite.
I may have tainted you, yes.
You know what? I don't feel like you did taint me. That one always that seemed to be the best story, although in recent viewings, the end's a little shaky. But we'll get to that. We're still on episode 1, Booby Trap. Okay, so after the opening credits, we start with narration. Unbelievable. A guy named J. Smith, and that's J.Jay Smith, does this narration. This could be one of the worst parts of the show, but I will tell you, it works for me.
I agree with you 100%. His voice got you ready for the episode. You know, you'd be like, okay, what's going on? You heard him talk and you were ready to go.
Loved it. Okay, so opening credits, we start with the narration explaining that it's 1999. A spaceship fell to Earth with advanced technology. There was no alien crew aboard at that time. There was an ongoing global war. But finding out that there were aliens in the universe somehow united the Earth, and they set upon to reverse engineer the alien tech, which they do for 10 years.
Okay, so can I bring up a few things about that real quick?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so a lot of people referred to it as global civil war.
Yeah.
Okay, was going on. It's kind of a little bit of a controversy now. And but nowhere does it mention in the series that civil war. It is global war.
Right.
And so some people have tried to figure out, like, hey, well, why is it global civil war? And it's kind of a mystery where the civil war part came from.
Having just recently heard the narration, it never does come up.
Yeah, I don't know. And I for the longest time, I remember saying it.
Well, here's the other part I want to bring up. And I find it interesting because I watched the original.
You're talking about the Japanese?
Yeah. In the original narration at the beginning, the spaceship, the SDF-1 crashes down on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
The Earth decides to unite, but in doing so, it starts a global war. After that global war is won is when they start working on reverse engineering the technology.
So they have to go through a war to get to that point. Whereas in the American version, the landing of the crashing of the ship stops the war.
Right.
Gotcha. Wow, what a twist!
It really is a twist, and it does make me think like, okay, so if we're thinking about Roy, he just got out of and they're called the Unification Wars. He just got out of Unification Wars and then starts fighting the Zentradi. Or in the American version, he was fighting a global war. The spaceship crashes down to Earth. There's 10 years of peace while they work on robotechnology. And then he goes back in to fight the Zentradi.
In the American version, later on, they do mention anti-unification terrorists kind of thing.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, and we'll get to that. Okay, so the episode does start where it says, that the ship landed or crashed. It stopped a global war, and then the total resources of an entire planet were spent restoring the ship.
Yes. So the actual episode begins in earnest on the eve of that ship's maiden flight. It's at this point that we're introduced to Captain Global. He is riding in a car on the way to the repaired ship, and that ship is called the SDF-1. I may have mentioned that before. I just want to... This is the first time we've actually heard the name.
And he's hungover, as a lot of top military brass tend to be.
Right.
And one thing that I wish they had done is when they showed the ship crashing into Earth, I wish they had have played a little part of Zor's story. Okay. Zor manufactured the SDF-1. He made the ship, and he was actually keeping it out of the hands of some evildoers, and that's why it ended up on Earth.
Now, does that come out in the show?
I think the Second War describes it a little bit better.
And that's kind of the fun of this first episode. This episode is nothing if not exposition. But every bit of dialogue has been a little hint
of this giant picture that's going to kind of play out in a Tarantino sort of way, you know?
But I gotta say, it feels like little Easter eggs. So we're introduced to Captain Global. It cuts to the ship bridge where we meet First Officer Lisa Hayes, Bridge Officer Claudia Grant, and the unfortunately named Bridge Bunnies, Vanessa Leeds, Kim Young, and Sammy Porter. So we're out there on the bridge. What do you think of the name Bridge Bunnies?
I don't think the series ever referred to them as the Bridge Bunnies, did it? Do you know?
No, they didn't.
Okay, yeah. So it must have been the books where I got that from. And the first thing that struck me about them, I thought in the beginning that they were comic relief. Now, I knew they were portraying Lisa as beautiful. She was this no-nonsense military woman, but she was also gorgeous. You know, and they were supposed to try to do that for Claudia as well. But the drawings didn't do as much justice as the books, I think, did.
Sure. And then we have Vanessa, who's giving Lisa a little bit of crap about not knowing anything about men.
Right, because she didn't have time for it. She was so focused on her career.
That's why she's first officer, right? Despite her and Claudia being lieutenant commanders, she's the ranking officer on the bridge.
The XO or something like that?
Yep, exactly.
And Lisa doesn't know about men. That's how she says it. And then, and it's a mild insult to her, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Overall, I love this scene. I do. It gives us a little bit of backstory. It tells us that Claudia's hanging out with Roy. It tells us the relationship that Lisa has with all the people on deck. And it kind of conveys that these people know each other outside of working on the bridge. So then we meet Rick Hunter, who is flying in on a civilian plane as a guest to Lieutenant Commander Roy Fokker and gets clearance to land from Lisa Hayes. In all, I think it's really well done, and if you're watching it for the first time, I don't think it bothers you.
Yeah, no, it's big jumps from one to the other, but it doesn't leave anything that leaves you like, where am I now, you know?
Yeah.
One thing that I wish they'd have made a little more apparent is during when Rick Hunter is coming in, he's able to communicate with Roy.
So just to set the scene, so Roy's talking to a group of civilians who've saddled around to watch Robotechnology, and he's speaking just on a mic on a stage, right?
Yes.
So then Rick comes in. And Roy says to somebody off camera, hey, can you make this radio only? Which is fine. And then he starts speaking to Rick directly. He's not speaking to the entire stage.
Right. So Rick is communicating from the cockpit of his aircraft.
Yes.
To Roy on the stage with a microphone.
Who does not have a headset. He has no way of hearing what Rick is saying. He can talk to him all he wants. Roy can talk to Rick ad nauseum, but it's not like they show an earpiece or anything like that. But that might be Robotechnology.
You know what? I think he has an implant in his head that picks up radio communications.
I thought the same thing, but let me take it back a little bit. So Rick Hunter starts hot dogging it in his civilian airplane, right? Amongst an exhibition of Robotech jet fighters. So Rick does this, what he calls a booster climb. He just starts heading up towards the sky, towards space.
Right.
But we see parts of his plane fall off in order for his boosters to hit overdrive.
That's true.
So here's my question. Did those parts of the plane fall off into the group of civilians watching this?
That was right under his plane as he climbed?
Absolutely. Secondly, who would design an airplane with pieces that fall off? It's not a rocket ship.
I never thought of that.
And look, I'm not going to be completely nitpicky because I know it's basically kit bashed from 3 different series. But within the same series itself, there should be some explanations, right?
Yeah, and and of course, what it probably is, the animators wanting to draw attention that his afterburners have kicked in, that he's boosting, and that it drops more weight, that it, for whatever reason, it increases his speed. And don't tell me the first time you watched it, you weren't like, whoa, shit, he's going fast.
Of course I was.
So
I was 11.
So it worked.
It does. And pieces falling off a plane, I don't care. It works for me. So Rick eventually comes down. He talks to Roy.
But before all that, Roy is getting mad at Rick for being up there, And of course, you know what? If you were some civilian plane trying to interfere in a military show of any sort, they would shoot your ass down in a second.
Especially with robotechnology.
So that was kind of far-fetched too. And so Roy starts yelling at him through his microphone. And the bottom part, because it's a microphone on a stick, and so the stand comes apart at the middle. And in the book, Roy grabs the bottom half of it before it hits the ground. But he does it in a super fast way that it tells you that's why he's such a great Veritech pilot. It says something to the effect of the reflexes that have made him such a wonderful Veritech pilot. Let him grab the bottom half of the stand before it hits the ground.
I see.
And it makes a good point, because he was one of the better fighters, pilots, and if you watch just the episode, you miss that. All you see is some guy grabbing the bottom part of a microphone.
That's interesting. Now, does the novel say that that's kind of inherent within him, or is that as a result of working within robotechnology?
No, it implies that it's a born gift. And that's why he was such a good Robotech pilot.
Oh, okay. So he has a high midichlorian count, is what we're saying.
Right.
Okay, so Rick eventually comes down, and we see them talking. From their conversation, you learn that Rick and Roy used to work together as amateur stunt pilots, and it sets up this older brother-mentor relationship between them. And in fact, they call each other brother multiple times in this. So let's clear it up. What is their relationship?
They are not related.
They're not, right?
No,
because he's saying, hey, my dad was disappointed that you didn't come back. But they do call each other brother in that same way that I hate in movies when they say something like, you're my brother, and I'm going to take care of my family because you're my brother.
Yeah, but you know what, though? It happened to you because when I introduced you to all this, I did it as a mentor and a brother, and it felt like that.
All right, you're just blowing my mind.
It's just the truth, man. So I get where they're going with that. Rick probably at some point wanted a brother. He had this guy who flew in his dad's circus, probably looked up to him to the highest degree. And when it was reciprocated, because Roy was rather fond of Rick, they were brothers. They, whether it was by blood or not.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just wanted that cleared up for my own edification.
Right. And who knows how wrapped up in whatever Rick's father was that, Roy might have been the only one available to him.
Yeah. I want to bring this up. So they share a petite cola.
Yes, they do.
So the shot is set up that you can see this machine. It just looks like a normal soda dispensing machine, but it has the name Petite Cola on it. Rick buys him and Roy a cola, and they share it while they're having this talk. And then we see the first appearance of Lin Min May. She doesn't get named, and she's only seen tending to probably a 5 or 6 year old who's upset that he can't get a cola.
Yep. I believe it's her nephew, Jason.
Jason. Wow. All right. See, so that's why you're here. One thing I wanted to say, because they're having this heart-to-heart conversation, and then the soda machine that at this point we thought was just a regular standalone soda machine, it travels over to Lynn, who's about, 20 feet away from Roy and Rick, on its own set of wheels, as if it was a personal soda machine to whoever needed one. The point I'm making is there is a lot of sight gags and humor. I would say about one every minute in this show. I would go on to say it works for me. I love it. So Jason is screaming about not being able to get soda. It's a joke, but this has been happening the entire episode, and you really don't notice it. I didn't notice it until about this point where I was like, they throw a joke in every so often, and you don't expect it, and you don't think about it.
And one of the things, when Rick says, what is robotechnology anyway? Just more modern war machinery, something like that. That soda machine. So in the books, one of the things that it's saying is that that robotechnology itself tends to affect even conventional machinery.
Oh, okay.
Because they're not putting cutting edge robotechnology in a soda machine, but just being around it, all of a sudden it has the ability to ride up to you if you're requesting a soda or screaming about it that I want a soda,
In a recent galaxy-wide taste test, kids, adults, and Zentradi alike all choose the refreshing taste of Petite Cola over any of its competitors. And now, thanks to the assistance of Robotechnology, you can enjoy an ice-cold Petite Cola even easier with our new roving vending machines. As a certain pop idol once said of Petite Cola, the thrill that you'll feel is really unreal. So call over a machine and rip the top off one today. Petite Cola, the feeling smashing.
So the machine is literally just coming up like, oh, you want a soda?
Yes.
At this point, we cut to a Zentradi spaceship, and we meet 2 aliens, again unnamed, and they're in search of a crashed ship. So what we infer is that they're on their way to Earth, and what I can only assume is the main Zentradi request a scout ship to be sent ahead of them to Earth. The one thing I want to bring up on this is the way the Zentradi talk, that voice modulation that they do.
It makes them alien, doesn't it?
And even though we don't know it yet, it does give weight to them because we eventually find out that they're much taller than your average human.
Yes.
So again, we don't know anything about them other than this voice, and the main one has half his skull covered in metal, and he has this booming deep voice that's modulated. I think it's brilliant. Again, it's exposition without being insulting to the audience.
And he has blue skin.
That's true. You know what? I didn't even notice that. So here's the one thing I want to ask, and again, because you've read books and all that. So the ship, the SDF-1, arrived 10 years ago, right? Narrator mentions that it tore through a fabric of space-time. So how long have the Zentradi been in pursuit of this ship?
My understanding is that they've been pursuing Zor's ship, as they called it, for a while.
All right.
Okay. And the last fold, which is the one that ended up in Earth space, threw them off, and they had to search for it for a while. Okay,
so it may have been up to 10 years, but it may have been a lot less.
Right, because it gets weird when the space folds start to happen. Yeah, it gets weird.
Yeah, that makes sense. So back to the episode. Back on Earth, Captain Global is made aware that there's something closing in on Earth. It's similar to the readouts they got 10 years ago when the SDF-1 crashed. And he sees cause for concern for that. And then we smash to a commercial break.
Okay. Yeah. And now, back to Robotech.
Exactly. So then we're back, we come back from the commercial break. Global rushes to the bridge. And I say he rushes into the bridge because he hits his head on the doorway, which doesn't even seem like something you needed to include. He hits his head. It looks like it hurts. Obviously, the door to the bridge is a little too small for Global, who's probably, I'd say, 6'2". But again, it's just a little joke in there. Oh, he hit his head. The captain hit his head. So he's told that the approaching alien ship is 200,000 miles out. And just for some reference, the distance from the Earth to the moon is 238,900 miles. So the Zentradi Armada has just passed the moon on its way to Earth. At this point, the SDF-1 starts powering up automatically and fires a gigantic laser blast at the scout ship.
Right, which we figure out is why the title is Booby Trap, you know?
But here's the thing that I love, and I'll bring this up later, but when everybody's sitting around trying to figure out what's happening, you know, the ship fires off. It destroys the scout ship, which I have to imagine is unmanned. Everybody on the SDF-1 is trying to figure out what's going on, and we see the back of Captain Global, and he starts laughing. It seems so crazy that he would start laughing, but he starts laughing because he's figuring out that it's a booby trap. And then he turns around and explains it to everyone. Now, I got to tell you, as a 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old, I still didn't understand what he meant when he said, of course, it's a booby trap. It's the oldest military trick in the book. I really didn't understand what in the world he was saying. But the thing that affected me was his laughing beforehand, as if he's going, of course. Why didn't I think this was going to happen before? And I think it really rounds out his character.
Well, it's because it's so realistic, and to me, it annoyed me when because I was like, what the fuck is he laughing for, you know?
Yeah.
And because there's people like that in real life. There's been like stressful situations at work, and somebody will bust up laughing about it and be like, oh, we never took into account blah, 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 you know? And I'm like, okay, well, quit laughing about it. It's not funny.
Right,
know?
right.
And you know, the Bridge Bunnies kind of show my sentiment too. They're like, huh? Which is, you know, I don't know. I think for the Japanese, one of the favorite things to add in our show is, huh? You never saw Lion-O from Thundercats going, huh?
Oh, of course not. So I want to set the scene for you real quick. You are aboard an alien technology ship that the best scientists of the world have been working on for 10 years. You somehow are on the bridge of that ship as a communications officer. You just heard that an alien ship is approaching you. The ship that you're on automatically went into self-defense mode and shot at it. The captain starts laughing and explains to you what just happened, and then you chastise him for attempting to smoke on the bridge. Of course, I'm talking about Sammy.
Well, right, but first she exacerbates it because she's like, Captain Global, and they're like, what's going on? No smoking on the bridge, sir.
Exactly, and I got to go back to, they got to cut the drama with the humor every so often in this episode. I'm excited to see if that continues on in the future episodes, but yeah, she essentially cuts the whole tension with something mundane.
Well, yeah, and it even works now because she was the youngest one. And so when you're the youngest one and you're trying to do everything by the book and you take your position seriously, you know, she's only trying to help the captain not make a mistake or, you know, or a violation on his own bridge.
Right, right.
And so she's like, Captain. And he's like, what? No smoking on the bridge, sir. And he doesn't reprimand her. As a matter of fact, he apologizes for it, you know, to a minor degree.
You know, I gotta say, it makes me love him more.
I wasn't going to smoke it. I was only holding it.
Even though he was holding up a match to it.
Right.
So, yeah. The badass Captain Global with a Russian accent is ready to smoke his pipe. Oh, I love Captain Global. So then he explains, all right, go ahead and scramble the fighters. So up in space, we have these repositories of fighters. But I gotta say, I don't recognize any of those ships that come out of this huge convoy of, I don't know how quite to describe it, but a huge ship that contains multiple smaller ships in it.
Okay, those were called fighter pods. You're talking about the ones that looked vaguely like airplanes, right? With the little 3 tri-cannons in the front?
Yes. Are those manned? Are those drones?
Those are manned.
Oh.
They're just fighter pods. And so, yeah, basically they're just non-transformable. Well, okay, we'll get into something else later on. But they're basically fighter ships. That's all they are. They are manned. And they're basically the first wave to come in and soften up the enemy. Okay.
So here's the important part to me. This is the first time we hear the fighting music, with the guitar theme. Again, going back to the music, I love this music.
Right.
I could hear it for every fight ever that has ever been. You can replace it for all movies. First time we hear it, I don't know the name of it. I tried looking it up and I just couldn't find it. But yeah, I just call it the fighting guitar theme.
I can hear it right now.
So any of the auxiliary music, really does bring me back to being 10 years old. And it may purely be nostalgia. It may be the fact that it's amazing. I can't judge properly. So write into us. Let us know.
Right.
So we go back to the ship or the bridge of the Zentradi, and we hear the first mention of the Robotech Masters. But that gets cut off, which I found interesting, knowing more about it, but I certainly didn't expect episode 1 to mention anything about the Robotech Masters.
Right, and it was an Easter egg, It was hey, you're gonna have to think about this later on.
And that's something that when you hear it's made from or it's mashed together from 3 separate anime, it doesn't matter because they thought it out. So they had a through line. So I believe the ships up in space that were holding those fighter pods, I believe what's holding them is called a space cruiser. So there's 2 of them, Armor 2 and Armor 10. I believe Armor 2 gets destroyed. Armor 10 is in dire straits. So Global says, all forces move out. That means the ground forces. So ground forces are ordered to go fight. That's at about 17 minutes. Another interesting thing, because we cut back to the Zentradi bridge and we hear the phrase Zor's Battle Fortress. Again, you don't know what that means. And he gets cut off. You don't even know who's speaking because he hasn't been named yet. He says Zor's Battle Fortress. He says Robotech ship. And he brings up Reflex weaponry. As you said, 3 wonderful Easter eggs that will come to fruition later.
Yep.
I think that's one of the beauties and the genius of this show. Also, the Zentradi appear to be very logical because they're trying to figure out what the humans are doing, as they call them, the Micronians. They try to figure out what they're doing and why they aren't using the full extent of the weaponry that they have. It's almost as if they don't understand it. And it's like being good at chess and playing somebody who doesn't know how to play chess. They don't follow the rules that you're expecting.
Right. And that did leak because I think he says these idiots believe as they don't even know how to use their own weapons.
Right.
And but that confused me too because I was like, well, what did they expect, And I don't think there's anything that ever really gets in depth as to what standard planetary defense is or should be, one way or the other.
Well, maybe those fighter pods were more capable. Maybe they were expecting a blast from the SDF-1's cannon. But yeah, they don't really explain it. So here's an interesting note. We cut from the Zentradi over to the tarmac or the runway of Macross City, and we see an explosion on the runway. What we see is the first sight of a casualty. Somebody who was on there probably flagging the ships.
Marshalling?
Yes, marshalling the ships that does the ah!
Right, and that is only in the newer versions. In the old ones, it was not there.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense because, they were told to knock down any excessive drinking, any excessive sexuality, and any excessive casualties. Because you will notice we don't see a lot of blood or rather we don't see a lot of red blood throughout the series.
Right.
And that obviously was a mandate from censors to say, hey, we got to make this ready for American audiences. But at the same time, that is the first casualty we see. Knowing that the space pods were manned, obviously, we've seen other people die, but we haven't seen it directly. We haven't seen a human form engulfed by flame, basically.
But on the remastered edition, right there, yes, you see a shadow engulfed in flame, and you hear the scream, and you're like, whoa, somebody just died.
I think that's pretty amazing.
It brings out the fact that war is not fun, man.
Yeah. And so in response, Lisa tells Rick, hey, why aren't you flying? Rick does a little, what? I don't know. Okay, I guess I'll get up in the sky, right?
Yeah, you're not talking to me, right?
Now the one thing I just want to mention is when Rick originally was at that Veritech fighter with Roy, and Roy was going to sit in the back seat with him, the nomenclature on the Veritech was VT-102. When he does climb in and starts flying off, I see VT-1023. Just a little difference, and I only pay attention to those things because I know that they're mashing together different versions, and that the Veritech fighter wasn't originally called a Veritech.
It was called a Valkyrie, right?
There you go. But anyhow, so Rick goes up into the sky, and he is flying around a lot of debris, a lot of planes getting shot down, a lot of Zentradi getting shot down. Roy finally sees the fact that Rick is up there, and I gotta say, doesn't seem that bothered.
Right. Okay, because he's like, Rick at first, and you would expect him to be like, what the fuck are you doing up here?
Yeah, like, hey, why don't you go land and have yourself a petite cola.
And talk to that chick that was fighting with that kid.
What the hell are you doing up in the sky? No, he's like, don't worry about it. I know you've never flown a Veritech before. It's not that different.
Right. How does it feel to be a fighter pilot?
Right. It does remind me of Luke in Star Wars, where they just hand him an X-Wing and say like, don't worry about it. You'll figure it out as you go along.
Don't press that red button. But you know what? At the same time, I also believe that maybe Roy had an idea of trying to show Rick all this stuff to suck him into it, And now that he's up there, he's like, hey, good. What do you think?
You know what? You just won me over with that. That's the whole reason he was telling him, it just gets into your blood.
Right. Well, and if you draw conclusions, that's why he probably invited him there in the first place, to show him all that stuff, Remember, it was a personal invitation from Commander Roy Fokker.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it was to show him, hey, man, look, this is the cutting edge of being a pilot, and I want you to be here with me.
So Rick gets into a little bit of trouble. He goes down into a Top Gun-esque flat G spin. He can't control, but he certainly was up high enough to have what I can only call a casual conversation with Lisa about how to switch the Veritech into Configuration B. So he goes into Configuration B. He crashes down into a building, having gone from a full, what looked like an F-15 fighter jet.
Okay, Mr. Major, I have to correct you there. First off, it looks like an F-14 Tomcat, not an F-15.
An F-14.
Okay. So yeah. Yes, so Lisa tells him, have you tried switching to Configuration B? And he says, what? And she says, you don't know? And that's the first, that's the first conflict between Rick and Lisa, is what the heck? And she's like, pull down on that fucking lever. So he pulls down, and then again, the music kicks in, and it's that dun 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 dun, and they always play that when it goes into a stressful type situation.
Yeah.
And Rick says, what's it doing? Now imagine your way around a plane. Okay. If I jumped into a Lamborghini right now, it's going to be crazy, but I've driven for most of my life now. I'm going to know the basics of what's going on.
Yeah, you're making a strong point here. Yeah.
All of a sudden, this plane starts doing something he has no idea what's going on, and it starts to transform. And so first off, legs kick out under it. Freaking legs, man. And then arms pop out, and you're like, whoa. And it's got a gun holding on to it. And then it crashes into buildings. And, you know, any type of aircraft crashing into anything is bad news. Most likely, you ain't gonna make it.
Yeah, you're going to lose part of your plane and, you know, your
Right.
life.
And so he goes through several buildings. Now, if you pay close attention, okay, as he finally completes his landing, he's crashed through several buildings. He is in full battleoid mode now, which is basically a robotic humanoid figure.
Yep.
Okay. So, but he's laying down because he crashed through these buildings. There's a scene where his feet are basically thrusters, you know, the jet thrusters that turn into his feet, and they're trying to stop his crash. And there's this part where these people, or this person gets kind of blown back.
Is that
by the
right?
Thrust. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Is that another casualty? You see it. It is a split second, and you just see the guy fly back. And, you know, there's all kinds of destruction and building around him. And I'm like, wow, did that guy just die? Rick could be guilty of manslaughter right there.
You know what? Because I thought when he's crashing into that building, he's crashing into a ton of people who thought to themselves, we'll be safe in this building. Let's go watch the activity from the 5th floor.
Exactly. Yes.
But being able to see that so clearly, to see somebody caught in a jet wash, which, you know, we know
is lethal. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not making it through that, right?
I don't think so.
But Rick's response is, huh, what do you know? What other reaction are you going to have when the jet airplane you were just flying turned into effectively a robot?
Okay, so then the robot stands up, okay, and it looks back up, if you remember that scene.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay,
yes.
So in the book, it describes it as an armored knight, is the way it says it, okay? And so on its own, basically, it stood up and looked back up into battle because the machine affected by robotechnology almost wanted to get back in the battle.
Can I tell you I have chills?
I'm just saying.
All right, so that's the end of the 22 minutes. The episode stops there. The narrator kicks in the next episode, and then throws some purple prose at us using the term human courage and steel will be tested. Again, reasons why I love this narrator. I love every bit of narration, although in repeated watchings, I will skip in the next episode and just get to the next episode. But I will always watch the intro.
That's funny. I always watch the last part.
So does that mean you have in your head every episode's name? Because that's how he finishes it.
You know, I probably, if you give me trigger words, I can probably come up with the episode, but to just like list them off, you know, like a geography test,
sure.
No.
Okay, well, you know what? That's the end of the episode. Again, I think we've talked about everything that makes it great to me. I want to ask you, who is your MVP
of episode 1? Right?
Yes, purely of episode 1.
I'd have to say Rick.
Okay, why is Rick your MVP?
Because you can tell he's young. Like he's the one, you know, other than Sammy, he's one of the youngest ones, you know, and it's really brought home when he's standing next to Roy, because you can see how tall Roy is over him.
Yeah, do we have a canonical version of what age he is?
16.
He's 16?
Yeah.
Good God. My MVP is Captain Global, based purely off of the laugh.
Yeah. No, and I can see that. I can see why Global would make the episode, but yeah, I guess I'm tainted by knowing the outcome of it. But like something told me at the beginning that Rick was the main character, you know, and so you know I was drawn to that, and I was like, okay, this guy, you know, what he went through and piloting that craft and not knowing anything about it, like I knew, okay, he's going to be better than Roy.
So one thing I was remiss in bringing up is when Rick is in his uncontrolled state with the Veritech fighter, when he's going down, we see a flashback of him and Roy in civilian airplanes.
Oh, okay. Again, that is from the remastered. I'm telling you, I've seen it 40 times. Never saw that part once.
Yeah, no, you're right. My question is whose flashback is that? Is that Roy's? Is that Rick's?
I believe that's Rick's, because it was him spinning at the time, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that is Rick's flashback. It seemed to make more sense that Roy would be having that flashback rather than Rick, rather than the, life flashing before your eyes. To me, I think Roy having it in that, oh my God, here's this guy I grew up with, who I've looked after, who looks up to me, that I'm at this moment unable to protect. So to a certain extent, it would make more sense to me that Roy would be having the flashback, not Rick. But I think you're right. I think it is Rick's flashback.
Because they pan away from Rick's face, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if they would have panned a little bit from Roy, then I could have totally seen it as his flashback, and it would have worked, but I think it's Rick's.
I think it is too. One last thing I want to ask you. I want you to rate this episode on a scale of from 1 to 10 Veritech fighters.
I give the episode a 9.
A 9?
Yes. I give it a 9 because I think there was a few things that they missed that they could have added that would have, in my opinion, would have given it a 10. One, like I said at the beginning, was I wish they would have played Zor's last battle. To show who was in control of the ship right before it crash land on Earth. It's hard to judge it because again, it's a very tainted ranking. I feel because of the information I know.
Look, even saying it's tainted, you're giving it 9 out of 10. I mean, to me, yeah, absolutely. To me, it's a 10. It's in episode 1. It has to give a lot of exposition. It does so without bogging me down to the action. We're introduced to a lot of characters, even though I know a lot of characters are still yet to be introduced. And we certainly don't give deep focus on some of them. But I think it's a perfect episode. It's a perfect beginning to a great show.
Well, so all I know is that 34 years ago, an 11-year-old boy with the attention span of an 11-year-old boy and tons of options to watch whatever cartoons, came across this episode, and it kept him interested enough to keep on watching.
Well, that's our first episode. We went a little long, so I believe we were going to try to keep this down to 30 minutes. But again, each week we'll be reviewing and discussing an episode bit by bit. As you can see, I hope this is as enjoyable to you, the listener, as it is to me.
All right. For all of those of you who have already watched Robotech, if you sat there and just remembered along with us the feelings and the emotions of the first time you watched it, then great. Stay with us. If you haven't ever, if you're listening for the first time and have never seen Robotech, I hope this interests you to watching it, because you won't be disappointed.
Thank you guys so much for listening. We hope you'll join us for episode 2.
All right. Peace out, guys.
That's it. That's episode 1, baby.